Hey guys, Matt from Pomelo Pictures here, and we are back with another video where I am in conversation with a fellow YouTuber and collector from all the way from the other side of the Atlantic. I'm joined this time by a guy I know simply as the Immortal John Hancock. Hey John, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm just realizing how your name sounds a lot better in your accent than mine. I'd never heard myself say it out loud before.
No problem.
Just for the purposes of anyone who might not know who you are, I think a lot of people on my channel probably do know who you are, but did you just want to do a quick, brief introduction on who you are and how people may know you already?
Okay, well, I've been in the video game collecting scene for about 25 years.
Wow.
I probably first got known about in 2004 when my collection was in Tips and Tricks magazine. And Joe Santulli of Digital Press, of Classic Gaming X, he made the Classic Gaming Expos of the 90s and the aughts. And he featured my collection in Tips and Tricks magazine. And from then, I kind of got, I moved in 2006 to Washington and got connected with Rick Wise and was one of the original organizers of the Portland Retro Gaming Expo. Yeah. So on top of all this, collecting as I went. And so I really got kind of known about just going after complete U.S. collections.
Yeah.
And I currently am at 26.
26 and complete collections.
26, and on a budget. Just collecting them a little at a time. Now, some of my collections aren't complete in box. When I say complete, I mean at least a copy of the game. Yeah. Loose. But everything of that set for a certain region, which would be North America. So, long story short, so Portland Retro Gaming Expo, collecting mega collections. I also broke off from Portland Retro Gaming Expo to do my own charity video game event, Callous Gamers for Kids, and so I'm on my 9th year of that. And
that's coming back around, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, well, no, it's going to come. It's usually in April and March, so
right, okay.
we're really kind of in our downtime now. But every year we do it, and this last year we raised $14,000 for LifeWorks, which is a nonprofit that works with kids with disabilities.
Oh, great! And
so I then started appearing on Metal Jesus Rocks channel, which really is probably how YouTube found me. But I was known in the collecting circle before then. And then I decided to do my own stuff on my own channel, which my channel was garbage when I first started it. It was just, as you would say, rubbish. It was just terrible when I first started it. And then I've since then tried to kind of evolve it as best as possible and make it more informative. But really, it's a collector channel. Yeah. Just talking about oddball stuff, video games, stuff that most other people can't showcase on their channel.
Sure. I mean, when I first came across your collection, when I think it was at Game Story 81 did a view around, and then obviously I started seeing you on other channels. And I was like, well, okay, I've got to have a conversation with this guy. I've got to get him on my channel. So, I mean, where did it all get started for you? Was it that you were a gamer as a kid and then you got into it, or was it? I mean, just take me back 25 years. Where did it all start?
That's a great question. So I am from a family of collectors. My mom collected like Norman Rockwell like plates and Coca-Cola products, and always used to have fun going with my mom to flea marts. And we had a decent flea mart where I grew up, the Jolly Green Giant. And at first I was collecting baseball cards. Right. And I would collect baseball cards, in the 80s when that was popular and cool. And, that kind of faded out in the early 90s. And then I went to comics. And from cards to comic books, comic books were cool. That was, everybody was kind of doing that. I enjoyed reading comic books. I loved Captain America, Wolverine, the Avengers. I was a big X-Men fan. And then I went from that to Star Wars action figures. I had some original action figures, and I started collecting Power of the Force 2. And I was a huge Star Wars fan. But really, by the mid-90s, it was just kind of collecting and fun, and it was neat to do. But really it was video games that really kind of captured my attention and something I was really passionate about. And since then, I just haven't looked back. I did it because I loved doing it. The big problem with like toy collecting is that I wasn't able to play with my toys.
Yeah.
Like I had them nice, pristine boxes and they just sat there. And one thing I loved about video games is like, you know, not only could you could collect it, you could display it, but you could also play it. And I thought that was really neat. And started talking to other fellow collectors and connected to some forums online and expanded my knowledge. And it was the right time, you know, and I started going to classic gaming expos in the early 2000s, and that really connected me with some mega collectors, and it expanded my knowledge and started pursuing stuff. And really, I was kind of the new kid on the block. You know, back then, it was all about Atari. Everything, everyone, all the people with money were collecting mostly Atari. And I was pursuing everything else because that was cheap. Sega Genesis, Odyssey 2, which is a vid pack, right? Vid pack over there. But so I was just pursuing the other stuff that nobody cared about, and I was getting it for cheap, and it just went from there.
And then 25 years later, you've got the room full of things like stuff behind you. So I mean, you said 26 full collections. I mean, in terms of numbers, like, if you do you have a rough idea of how many games overall, or is it?
I want to say over 11,000. I haven't done a count because it's kind of a mess right now.
I was going to say,
there's
it must take a while to do a count.
Yeah, it never was about the numbers for me because, like, you know, there's people out there that have twice as many games as me, and there's some wonderful, great mega collectors out there that don't want anybody to know who they are. But I think that, you know, for me, it's about just kind of being an ambassador of video games and being passionate about it, and for the right reasons.
Well,
and
that was going to be my next question. It's kind of what was the motivation? Is it about game preservation more than anything, or is it just because it's a passion?
I think passion first. Preservation is definitely up there. Education, so I'm an educator. Yeah. I'm a second grade teacher, but I also taught computer science at a community college for 5 years. And so I brought in stuff all the time. I love that I can do that. And I'm bringing it into second grade classrooms, which is great. You know, I brought in my Oregon Trail, my Apple II, and I tried bringing in a Pong unit, but it didn't work. I was so frustrated. But I brought in, you know, an N64, and they played Tetris and Mario Kart. And so for me, it really is a lot about preservation, but more importantly about educating others about weird stuff or what's out there, and showcasing stuff instead of having it sit in a box. You know, I've used my YouTube channel as just to kind of talk about stuff that normally it would just sit there. And so it's kind of become my virtual museum.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because I mean, it's important that younger people, but also people that just aren't aware of it, are made aware of the older games. But lots of people will talk about the NES, Super Nintendo, N64. It's the stuff that gets ignored, stuff that people forget about, maybe because it wasn't very good or it didn't sell very well, and that could just get lost to time if nobody's talking about it. Absolutely. I think you bring up a really good point, is that I consider myself an oddball collector, and I've kind of been pegged as that, and that's okay, because there's so many people out there talking about amiibos and Wii U and Switch, and I think that's great, but that's, to me, just not. I mean, that's just not what I grew up with. But no one's going to forget about those either. Everyone will. There will always be someone to collect Nintendo stuff. There'll always be someone to collect Sega stuff. But some of your, one-off systems or old Pong systems or whatever it happens to be, they just won't be remembered. I mean, one thing that a console I had that isn't very good at all. You'll know what it is, but I've seen people go into your game room and they've never heard of it. It's things like the Tiger Gamecom. I actually had that growing up. I don't know why I bought it, but I kind of have a strange love for this thing because not many people know about it, and I'm going to do some videos on it because it wasn't a good console, but it was still an important one because it was
very important.
It was one of the first touchscreen handhelds. Yep. It had internet connectivity. You could read your email on it. You could go on the internet on it. It was an important bit of gaming history, even though it wasn't very good. But because it wasn't very good and it didn't sell very well, it could easily be forgotten. And I don't want it to be forgotten.
That's exactly right. You exactly expressed everything of why I choose these oddball systems, because no matter whether a system's good or bad, it contributes something to the evolution of gaming. You know, I could even look at weird consoles such as, the CDI Interactive, or, the Nuon, even the Nuon, and I can think of, that contributed to where gaming is today.
Yeah.
Maybe a game company saw the failure of that and said, you know what, we're not going to make that same mistake, but this had some good ideas. We might incorporate something from that into our new console.
Yeah. So they're important stepping stones, because I think that's the thing. I mean, it's probably a different subject to go into, but I remember I watched the Video Games, the movie, and one of the lines in there really resonated with me. It was saying video games provided an opportunity for kids to fail, but safely. Because I think there's a lot of, with like YouTube, with Facebook and other social media, you can sort of portray your life as this amazing thing. And I think kids forget that they can fail. And it's not just, I mean, gaming's a great thing because they're able to fail safely, but I think it's important in anything to be able to show what the failures were so that you appreciate the successes more. Like, you can appreciate the Switch and the PS4 and everything. That's great, but I think you kind of need to understand all these all failed one-off Pong consoles, all these failed handhelds and things that built their way up to what they are now.
Absolutely. I agree with that. I mean, there's so much out there that just gets overlooked, and it's hard because if you don't have it, it's harder to talk about. Like, there's people that do great videos that just talk about stuff, and honestly, talk videos bring in more views.
Yeah.
But I know that my audience personally likes to see the weird physical stuff, and so I always struggle with that on my channel, just like the balance of showcasing weird stuff with having some conversation, because with conversation there's more banter and people can interact more. I'm trying to do a better job at like bringing in guests and stuff, but yeah, I'm really passionate about the weird stuff. I mean, I have so much. I mean, I have a game room full of weird stuff that's often overlooked, and so I essentially have an endless supply of stuff that I can talk about.
And it's important that you do showcase them, but also I've forgotten the point that I was going to make there. Oh no, you're in the right part of the world to be doing this. I mean, you're in Washington, where you did a video recently where you'd found, well, not you, but you'd had someone else on your channel where they'd found a Earthbound NES prototype.
I know, not crazy, and it was like
it was in a Zelda 2 cartridge, and it's kind of, I mean, everybody, Earthbound is a great game and all, but to be able to see the development of it and how you have this sort of laser cut Zelda 2 cartridge with it, that's arguably more interesting to me, because it's something that you wouldn't see anywhere else.
And I asked if I could take it apart, and he was totally fine with it. And, just to hold that in my hands, and like the Northwest in the States it's just nuts. And so, California was, back in the day with a hotbed of Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
And, then I moved to Washington. There's a bunch of mega collectors here, and you got Microsoft and Nintendo in the backyard. And it really was just timing. And there's just so many neat stuff to find in this area. You find all the time a bunch of Xbox prototype controllers can be found at Goodwill at any given day. You got, not any given day, but like often.
Sure, it happens.
And you find all sorts of stuff up here. I found, of all the prototypes I've found in my collecting, I found 2/3 of my prototypes in the state. I found an unreleased Atari 2600 prototype 10 years ago in here. And it just weird stuff. And weird items, and a bunch of promo Nintendo stuff can always be found. But yeah, it's a great area to find, and there's a great collector community. Now, there's pros and cons to that, of course.
Sure. But I think it's important that these kind of things do get into the hands of collectors because that's the way they're going to be preserved. Like save with like Sega. I used to work for Sega over here for the Sega of Europe headquarters, and
awesome.
The Sega of America headquarters doesn't really exist anymore. No. They had to shut everything down, and a lot of stuff got sent over to London. But there was not. I've been through the archives there. There's not much there. It's a lot of paperwork on Sega Saturn and Mega Drive and Genesis stuff. There may be some stuff that's been put into storage in California, but I don't know where any old Sega prototypes have disappeared to. They're not in the Sega of Europe office, I know that. And if things don't get into the hands of collectors, things, they may be things like field destroyed, and at that point they're gone forever. Oh, John, I think I've lost you. Okay, we seem to have lost John. I'm gonna get him back on this in a second, and I'll join you back in a sec. Oh, sorry, I lost you there. I was just, I don't know how much of what I just said you heard, but I was talking about a lot of the stuff with Sega may have been lost. It may have been field destroyed. We don't know where it's all gone. And if things don't get into the hands of people that are going to preserve them, they may just be gone forever. They may be destroyed.
I got a great story about Sega stuff actually from 32X unreleased prototype. Spot Goes to Hollywood. And a prototype was found by a friend of mine, and so we essentially dumped it and got in contact with the original programmer, and he was ecstatic that it was saved because he didn't have a copy himself.
Oh wow!
So, and it was a great story of how, you know, there's people out there that want these things to be preserved, but at the time that nobody really cared about it. So you know. Especially with like disc-based stuff, you know, you look at it as just a burned CD. Well, what would you do if it, you know, wasn't the final version? Well, you looked at it and wanted the final version, and you probably throw it in the garbage.
Yeah,
you know?
You're absolutely right. If it's a CD-based thing, it's probably more easily lost than a cartridge, and probably more easily destroyed. I mean, it might not have even been thrown away, but it just could have been so beaten up and scratched that it's no longer usable. Whereas with cartridges, that's sort of less of a chance that that's going to happen.
I think the other issue too is when you get to stuff like code on hard drives. Yeah, hard drives die.
Sure.
So the shelf life of them is pretty short, and so there's times when there might be and the hard drive's not going to be labeled the name of the game. No. So. And so that easily, how much of that stuff is just thrown out or lost forever? You know, I think of Happy Console Gamer did a video about an unreleased South Park game.
Yes, I saw that. Yes,
and that was a very, very popular video for him, and that was saved just on
the system, wasn't it?
Pure luck that was found, and there's other things too. I can think of like a Toe Jam and Earl game for Dreamcast. I think that was unreleased and some other things, but that stuff happens all the time, and who knows what else is out there.
Well, this I've got a topic written down here that wasn't originally on my list of things to talk about, but in the last week it's become something to talk about, particularly in terms of game preservation, and that was the Super Nintendo Mini. Because this was meant to be a video about collecting and preservation things. Until a few days ago, the Super Nintendo Mini would not have been a topic to get on this video, but there's one very good reason that it is, and that is that they've chosen to include Star Fox 2. Now, for anyone out there that doesn't know, Star Fox 2 was essentially a completed game, but it was chosen not to be released because it could have ended up competing with Star Fox 64. Although there is a version out there, we don't know if it's the final version. You can buy repros of it and certain things. But this is the first time, I'm not sure what year it was, 93 maybe, 94? Since then that it's actually getting an official release. And that sort of sparked a lot of preservationists' interest, because it's kind of like, that's a move I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, instead of this just being, just a bunch of awesome games, via emulator on a mini Super Nintendo, I consider the SNES Mini I kind of look at it as the official release of Star Fox 2.
Yeah.
I've heard that as well about Star Fox 2, that the ROM that's out there is 90% done and may not be the final. This is just kind of what people are talking about.
No one really knows, but yeah.
No one really knows. It's amazing that Nintendo kept this. It makes me wonder what else is Nintendo keeping.
Yeah.
And if this is popular and great, why couldn't they release, other things? Like, why can't they release Earthbound Zero or whatever they call the Nintendo one, and do another NES classic and include that with it? Because I guarantee they're going to be watching sales of this.
Oh, absolutely.
They're ramping this up. I think it's still going to be hard to get, but I think the SNES Mini is going to be a huge success worldwide.
Oh, absolutely! It's already gone on. It already went on pre-order here. I managed to get one on pre-order, but it's already sold out. It was released at a very strange time of day. It was released at like 10 to 4 in the afternoon, and I managed to get a pre-order. But when I checked back in about an hour and a half, it was already sold out. So I mean, that's how quickly they're moving. I can only imagine how quickly it's going to move in the US. It's a slightly different system because obviously your Super Nintendo looks a little bit different, so the SNES Mini looks a little bit different too. But why I found it interesting, not only just Star Fox 2, but for the European market, the games on it are very similar or exactly the same as the ones in the US market, which include games that we never got because we never got Earthbound. There was never a European release of it. What else did we have? Super Mario RPG, that was never released over here as well. So that's really interesting that we are finally getting official releases of those games. The only thing for me was that I kind of wish they'd gone a bit further in that sense and done a European specific one, because there are games like, if anyone's watched my channel, they'll know I'm a massive Kirby fan. But we never got Kirby's Dream Land 3 on the Super Nintendo. There was an American release and there was a Japanese release, but they spent so long trying to convert it over to PAL that there was never official release. You can buy reproductions and things, but they never actually released it. And I'd kind of wish they'd... Although I understand the Kirby games that are on this, they're great games, Kirby's Dream Course and what we would know as Kirby's Fun Pack, but I kind of wish that other games like Kirby's Dream Land 3 would have got on there as well, because that's just it. Or if it wasn't going to already sell out, including games that we never got, was a great way of making it sell out that bit quicker. And I just wish they'd kind of gone that way.
Yeah. I agree. No, I think that there's two games that stand out that I think most people really wanted to include in this package. There's about 10 that everybody wants. Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but Dreamland 3, and the other big one is Chrono Trigger. So that's the two that I kind of are circulating in the discussions that I've seen online. But yeah, I agree. I think Kirby's Dreamland 3 was. I think would have been a better choice, but for whatever reason, maybe they went off sales.
Yeah,
who knows?
It may have been to do with a multiplayer thing as well. They wanted to make sure, because Dream Course, that's not Chrono Trigger wasn't the game I thought you were going to say. I thought you were actually going to say Mother 3, because that's been something that the community. Obviously, there is a fan translation out there. I'm not a huge Earthbound guy, but I know that is something that people have been asking for a long time.
Yeah, Earthbound and Mother, it's one of those things where I think for a Nintendo franchise, everybody wants it because they didn't release it. But I don't know how well that would resonate with like the casual gamer.
Sure.
And so I think the collectors and everybody, we know how awesome that series is. But talking to someone down the street, they'd be like, "What's that?" Yeah. Oh, okay. Or like I think Nintendo's going. I think their sweet spot is just the person that maybe had a Nintendo growing up that didn't collect video games, had the Mario, had the Zelda, had the Metroid. They're going to throw some other real popular stuff onto, this emulation box. Yeah. And I get why they didn't do that. But I don't know. It's always, we're as collectors, as both me and you, thinking about all the wonderful stuff Nintendo did.
Yeah.
They could have put 40 games on this and not covered everything. Yeah. I mean, the Super Nintendo to me is like the best Nintendo ever was.
It's just it was a strange mix, because say with the NES Classic they put 30 games on there and you go, oh okay, you know, they're all solid titles. It's only when you start with the Super Nintendo Mini that it's got Star Fox 2, and then for us it's got things like Earthbound and Super Mario RPG. Yeah. You start thinking, oh well, what else could we have got on that? And it's kind of, Star Fox 2 is great because, like you say, I think a lot of people had written off with the disaster in terms of numbers of the NES Classic. I think people had written off the Super Nintendo. It's only by saying that Star Fox 2 is going to be that complete 100% official release of it, suddenly it kind of sparked people's attention again.
I think that they're going to do this for a while. I predict, I'm going to make a prediction now, that they're going to do a SNES 2, or they could do the remodel. I think they'll do it with Nintendo as well. They're going to take it and put all the games that they forgot with the first run and incorporate some type of second run. Who knows? It could be wrong, but I think that they're going to do that. They're watching this. It's a huge boost to their stock. It's a huge boost to, I think, the casual gamer.
Yeah.
I mean, let's look at it. Like, I don't know if the Atari flashbacks have ever been released over there.
We've got sort of the big thing over here was the Sega Mega Drive ones, because the Sega arguably is bigger, although they haven't been done very well.
You're talking about the At Games ones, Games.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, they've kind of tested the waters for many years, you know, and they took over the flashbacks after Atari did them for I think a couple years, and then At Games kind of took over with that, and they've kind of milked those for a while.
Yeah.
But you know, the truth of the matter is, and I think it's safe to say that the top tier Nintendo games would compete or destroy the top 20 of Sega, the top 20 of Atari, the top 20 of Commodore. I don't know. I just think that Nintendo's top tier games, it's hard to compete with that. Yeah. And to have them all in one like retro console, I mean, to go out and buy these games would be hundreds of dollars.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And to have it all in one like little mini console that you can hook up to a modern TV with save states. And it's a collectible and like an awesome package. That's one thing I really liked about the NES Classic is the poster, like the state in the States.
Yeah.
We had a poster and a nice, oh man, it's just a sexy box. And I mean, everything about it was just awesome.
But it's a nice way of getting kids into it as well, because it's something that a bit more tangible that they can understand. Like if your kids haven't grown up with knowing what CRT TVs are, or the difference between component, composite, HDMI, RF, all these different things, it can be a bit overwhelming for some. And then, you know, putting the cartridge in and trying to explain, oh no, there's only one game on this thing, and then I think it's a lot more approachable for younger kids. And if it gets them into the retro scene, that's great. That's even better, because it's nice that they'll want to then know what the original hardware was, rather than just this emulation box.
One thing I liked about the package too, and you know, a lot of people complained about the short controller.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is when I first got mine, I wanted to capture footage for my channel, and I hooked it up to my computer. And I noticed that cord length, if you're sitting at a computer, is a perfect length.
Interesting.
So I wonder, and it was just interesting how, like that, I just think that, you know, there was a lot of thought into the package, minus the cord length, which is an easy fix.
Sure.
But it was really, I think they really thought about this. I'm really excited about what else they're going to do. And I mean, the Super Nintendo Mini, I mean, I think they can sell as many as they make.
Yeah.
I mean, this could easily sell, I would say easily 5 million.
Yeah. And
easily 5 million.
And it can be a long-term thing for them as well. Because if they're able to bring in the NES Mini back into production as well, they can have those two running side by side for quite a while.
Yeah, just change the packaging, and they could do different games, or they could do a top loader model and just put in different games. I think if they really were smart, they would do a poll.
Yeah,
and they would do a poll with their fans. What games do you want to see on the second one? And do that. I also think that might be why they're doing less games for the Super Nintendo. is that they're going to do a sequel.
Yeah.
And they're take all, because the Super Nintendo's library is so diverse. There's so many awesome games.
Yeah.
And I think that, no matter what they put on there, I mean, they could easily just fill it up.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And it's interesting that they are doing it because they could have just gone with the Virtual Console for the Switch, but they have gone down this route as well. And it's kind of nice that for us as well as collectors, there is this one box that will have 21 games in it, or with the NES 30 games in it, that you don't need to just have existing as digital downloads on a different console. There is a dedicated thing for it.
I think the other thing that they need to consider doing is to put these on a compilation disc or cartridge on the Switch or the 3DS. I mean, that would be an instant buy. I mean, if you had the NES Classics all on cartridge for the Switch, I mean, that would be multi-million seller.
Because we've seen, we haven't quite seen it, but we've seen there was the Mega Man collection on the 3DS.
Yep.
And then there's Ultimate NES Remix, which is kind of the closest, which isn't the games. It's it's sort of mini games based on those games. Yeah. But I mean, they were great sellers, and they were quite a small thing. But the amount of memory that an NES or Super Nintendo game takes up, you could fit a lot onto a 3DS or a Switch cartridge.
I think Nintendo, and they haven't done it yet, but I think of all the greatest retro game compilations, the Rare Replay for Xbox One was fantastic. My favorite of all time, that's up there. But my favorite of all time is Sonic's Ultimate Sega Genesis Collection.
Yeah, which is just called, I think it's just called the Ultimate Sega Mega Drive Collection here.
Yeah, and that's for 360 and PS3. Amazing. Amazing, because it has a mix of interviews, but it has a mix of it's a little bit of everything, and it's got some unreleased stuff. Nintendo has the capability of doing something like that, and it would just be amazing.
Yeah.
And so I hope they think about that down the road. I don't know. I think they're testing the waters right now, and I think they're going to be printing money with the SNES Mini.
I don't doubt that. The speed at which our one sold out, I can only imagine how quickly the American one's going to sell out. I just hope that they've learnt from their mistakes of the NES Classic, that they've produced enough. I hope that everyone getting annoyed at the fact that the NES stopped production meant that they were producing this one, and that they've got a big enough stock that we're not just going to see them on eBay in a few weeks' time. I mean, they already are on eBay. There's pre-orders on eBay for $200+, which is ridiculous.
It is, and I think it's going to be worse now because people are going to see those and think, well, I can either keep this or sell it and double my money.
Yeah.
And so, with the economy over here not being great, I think there's going to be a lot of people that are going to pursue it now. They know it's coming. Yeah. And console releases, no matter what, always kind of bring the scalpers out.
Yeah.
And now that this is happening again this year, we're going to see it. I still can't find Switches. I mean, I go to all my local stores and game stores. Nobody has them.
That's interesting.
There's still an issue with Switches in my region, in my area.
That's interesting because I mean, here, if I wanted a Switch, I could find one. I might have to pay a little bit of a premium on it. But we have a store over here called CEX, which is basically secondhand electronics, DVDs, games, camera stuff. Okay. And nice. I could walk into any one of them on the high street, and they would have 2 or 3 Switches in the window. They're a bit pricier than retail, but I could get hold of one.
Oh, okay.
And the NES Classic, they're starting to stockpile because the retail price, so to speak, of those in one of these stores is still about £125, which is more than double what its retail when it first came out was, and nobody's buying them. Because it's just not worth it. I think people. I mean, it depends. For some people, it is worth it, but it's a shame that they are now just it's kind of like new old stock is just sitting around because nobody's willing to drop the price on it because they think they can scalp it for a better price. Even high street stores are doing it.
Yeah, you see them at retro games shows. I went to Seattle Retro Gaming Expo recently, and there was one there, you know, and it was sitting on a table for I think $160 US, and so you know, and it just sat there. Nobody really commented about it, and it's tough, you know. I think that that goes to show you that, you know, you can't always have something at X amount of dollars. No. You know, it's the point people look at it and say, like, that's not worth it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think Nintendo will have backlash if it becomes harder to get, because people are still frustrated in my area about finding a Switch.
Oh, absolutely.
The NES Classic issue never got solved. Even with the SNES Mini, that doesn't solve that people still want the NES Classic. And I have one. It's fantastic. I play on it. It's great.
I actually think
Nintendo still needs. Yeah.
I actually think Nintendo are even struggling for stock themselves, because I mean, over here you can find the red and blue Switch consoles quite easily. Finding the grey one is almost impossible.
Oh, really?
And Nintendo themselves ran a competition to win one. They had 3 winners. The competition ended 3 months ago, and they haven't announced a winner yet. It says on their website they were meant to announce a winner within 7 days. 3 months has gone by, and there haven't been.
Wow.
Because I entered it, and just out of interest to see if it would how it would work and how easy you could get one. They don't respond on Twitter. They actually have stated they don't respond on Twitter. If you can send a letter, which I've done, and then you get a letter back saying you need to email PR. I've emailed PR. You can't.
Wow.
I think it's a simple case of Nintendo themselves can't get hold of the grey Switch, and they can't. They're just not willing to say it yet. So it's strange. It's strange that there is such a demand for these things, and that they haven't learnt the lesson to anticipate demand. And I really hope they do this with the SNES Mini.
But yeah, they stated they're going to increase production. I don't know if it was official, but I did hear that it's only I heard somewhere that it's only going to be in like 90 days. Did you hear that, or is that something?
I don't know. That could be a US thing. I don't really know. It's quite strange that we were able to pre-order it so quickly. I registered my interest, and I honestly expected to wait a month or two, because it's still not coming out till the end of September. But within 3 days, I think it was 2 or 3 days, the email came through. It's like, it's ready to pre-order now. And
wow.
And yeah, within an hour and a half or so, it was sold out. So I don't know. I don't know if they did a limited pre-order to test the water of how much they need to produce. But whatever production schedule they've got at the moment, at least for the UK, they need to increase it. I don't know.
Yes.
I don't know if it's the same Europe wide, but certainly this was Nintendo UK that sent out this pre-order. It's on the Nintendo UK store, not the Europe store. So I don't know. I don't know if it's just a localized thing for us. But yeah, it's looking like it's going to be the NES Mini all over again, at least for us. I don't know. The US is a different market. There's a different headquarters and everything. It could be different, but I can't tell at this point. Yeah.
Well, I wish everybody can get one. That's really, I talked about that on my last video about the SNES Mini, and I just want everybody who wants one to play it, that wants to play one and wants as a gift, because it's coming out at Christmas time. That was the other tough thing about the Classic, NES Classic, is that, you know, it came out during Christmas time, and everybody wanted one, couldn't get one.
Yeah.
And then they announced they're going to make more, and then you still couldn't get one. I actually scored 2. I scored one the day one it came out, because I had a connection.
Yeah.
That's how I got my first one, and it's in my collection back here. But the next one I gave away at my charity video game event, and for a contest. Sure. And I walked into a Walmart and they had one on the shelf, and it just was sitting there, and it just timing. Yeah. But I mean, that's the only one I saw on the shelf ever. since it came out.
I'll be honest, I haven't seen any other than ones that have been brought into this shop and sort of to be resold. I haven't seen any anywhere. And even at Christmas, I was interested in just getting the controller because I had some games on the Wii Virtual Console. I was like, oh, maybe I'll just get the controller. It's £10 or whatever. At that Christmas, it was over £100 to try and just the controller.
That's
which is crazy. It seems like they're almost going to be the more collectible thing in the future because they seem to be harder to get hold of than the actual console.
Yeah.
But anyway, exactly. I think we are coming up to the end of part one. We talked a little bit longer than the SNES Mini than I was initially intending. Right. But I will put a link in the description to below for part 2, and we'll see you guys in the next one.